All right, guys, welcome back to the Modern Man's Playbook. This is an emergency episode today. I didn't have enough time to book the studio and get into the normal studio mode here, so we're doing a little home studio setup today for an emergency episode. But this is the playbook where we break down the noise, we strip away the fluff, and we give you the real game underneath all the headlines. I'm your host, James. And today we're going to dive into something that's taken social media by storm right now, and that is the Trump versus Elon feud. So at face value, the Trump and Elon feud, I'm sure you guys have seen it all on Twitter, and it's going crazy right now. Everyone's worried about it, and at face value, it just looks like two mega billionaires just throwing punches on Twitter. And you got Trump, saying that he's cutting Tesla subsidies, and you got Elon clapping back at him, saying that Trump wouldn't have won without him. And then you've got people talking about the Epstein list, and government spending call-outs, and JD Vance memes even getting sprinkled in there for a little bit of spice. But here's the thing: it's not about the drama. That's the big thing. The drama doesn't really matter here. It's not about Tesla. It's not about politics. It's not even about whether Trump or Elon Musk is even right in the scenario. It's a chess match, and it's a chess match for control over the narrative, and more importantly, for influence over the future. So if you're just watching this beef between Elon and Trump like it's an episode of reality TV, you're actually missing out on one of the biggest lessons that you can actually learn to change your life. So we're going to go over that today. We're going to unpack it all. Not like fanboys, but we're going to break this down like a strategist, because this isn't about picking a side on whether or not Trump or Elon is right. It's about understanding how the game is actually played, and so you can make it better in your own world. So let's start with one principle that everyone's ignoring with this beef. So if you zoom out here for a second and strip away the celebrity names and actually think about strip away the politics too. Just think about what we really have here. What do we really have? We got two powerful men, both at the top of their respective empires, and they're going at each other in public. They're calling each other out. They're firing off tweets. They're leaking stories, poking at each other's reputations. And just pause for a second. Ask yourself, in your own life, when has that approach ever worked? Like, ever. When has that approach ever worked? And when has calling someone out in public ever actually solved the problem? And the answer is almost never. Almost never. Because public criticism triggers ego. Ego triggers defense. And defense turns, a solvable disagreement into a full-blown war. And that's why one of the biggest unwritten rules of power is that you praise in public and you criticize in private. I don't know if you guys have heard that one before, but that's the difference between men with emotional intelligence and little boys that just want attention. You see it in leadership all the time. The best managers, they correct their team behind closed doors, and the best partners, they bring up issues one-on-one, not in front of friends or not on social media. And your best friends, they pull you aside, when something's off. They don't, call you out in the group chat. And that's maturity, that's discipline, that's long-term thinking. But Trump and Elon, in this current moment, they're throwing all of that out the window. And why? I think it's because ego and attention is getting the best of them. And as a result, no one's winning, right? Not them, not their followers, not the country. It's just a bunch of headlines, just a bunch of tweets, a bunch of noise. And I think this is a big takeaway for a lot of people to use in your life, career, relationships. And that's that public beef is a lose-lose. Even when you're right in a public beef, you look wrong. Because when you fight in the spotlight is what becomes the story. You got to solve your problems privately. And if someone disrespects you, take it behind closed doors. If something's broken in your team, your family or your relationship, handle it off camera. Handle it, in private. Don't perform. Put on a performance for people. Resolve the issue. That's like the real power, I feel like. Now, if you flip it over to Elon, we all know Elon's brilliant. He's a visionary. He's got balls for sure. He's built PayPal. SpaceX, Tesla, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Starlink, and the list goes on. And even the smartest men can kind of misread the room. And here's where Elon messed up. And I think it's a lesson every high achieving man needs to internalize. Elon thought that influence in one area provides equal power in all areas, right? He's the king of the tech world. He's a builder. He's a genius. He's like the main character everywhere. But in politics, that's a whole different game, right? That's a whole different ball game. He's not the alpha anymore. And even if you got more money or more brain power or more accomplishments in politics, the president is the center of gravity. You know what I mean? And Trump doesn't share the spotlight for anyone, I'm sure, as you all know. So Elon moved to Texas, back to Republican Party. It looked like a smart move, low taxes, pro-business, more freedom to innovate. But here's where he missed, and this is huge. Governments don't like independent kings. They'll accept your help. The government will let you build, but they'll never let you run the show. And that's where Elon went too far. He thought he could influence the policy, shape the agenda, maybe even be the tech-savvy voice behind the throne. But Trump doesn't play the game, right? He doesn't play that game. And the moment that Elon's presence got too loud, too bright, too threatening, whatever you want to call it, the hammer came down on him. And that's not a glitch. It's how power protects itself. So here's the lesson for you guys. You might be the man at your job, right? You might be the alpha in your friend group. You might be a boss in your own business, whatever, right? But when you walk into a new room, you start at zero. You got to build respect again. You got to read the temperature. You got to learn the game. And if you walk in loud, demanding control, assuming that your reputation's going to carry you, that's when you're going to get humbled by people. And the world doesn't reward entitlement. It rewards awareness. And Elon, for all his genius that he has, he forgot when he stepped into the political arena that you got to be humble. You got to start at zero. So if you're climbing the ladder and if you're building something, if you're moving into new spaces, just remember this. You got to stay sharp, stay humble, and you got to read the room. And let's keep it real. Most people watching the Trump versus Elon feud are only seeing the surface. They're locked in on who's winning the argument. They're looking at who has the best soundbite, who's got the most retweets, who's looking tougher. But smart men, strategic men, look at what's not being said, because the loudest voices in the room are rarely the ones pulling the strings. And if you learn to watch the quiet parts of things, you'll see the real playbook. So let's talk about it. So when politicians go at each other, or when billionaires start beefing, people treat it like it's football. Like Team Red versus Team Blue, Trump versus Biden, Elon versus the government. But underneath that noise, there's a quiet agreement that never gets touched. It's like a silent set of rules that they all follow. And I'll list them for you guys. I'll list a couple of them for you guys. So first thing is more spending is always going to happen, right? No matter who's in office politically, the budget always gets bigger. Cutting government waste is just like a talking point, but the money printer is always running. Number two, the middle class is always the golden goose. They'll never say it, but the middle class is the one funding the game, for sure. 10 times out of 10. It's not the ultra rich, not the bottom rung either. And they'll do everything that they can to keep you thinking that you're the one being protected, that the middle class is being protected. Number three, older people will never ever be touched. Social Security, pensions, Medicare, all off limits. Why? Because people 60 plus vote. People that are aged over 60 vote in massive numbers. You think politicians want to piss off like 80% of their voter base? Not a chance, right? And that's like the third rule. And number four, China will always be framed as a threat, and that's a way to keep our defense spending up. It keeps people patriotic. It keeps both parties agreeing on strength, and that's the easiest way to sell trillions of dollars in infrastructure and tech investment. And the last one that most people always talk about, most politicians talk about, is free speech, and that is sacred. And no one will ever, openly campaign on restricting speech, obviously. But behind the scenes, they regulate big tech, they pressure platforms, they use algorithms to curate what you see, and quiet control is what they do, and it's easier than banning something out loud. So you got to ask yourself, Why don't they ever talk about any of these things directly? And it's because those are the untouchable levers of power. And if you're paying attention, these patterns will kind of tell you where to invest your time and money, how to build, and where the world is headed. So if you want to know the future, watch what the politicians protect. Watch what Elon and Trump protect, right? So I'll make it simple for you guys. Every politician, mostly every politician, agrees, even silently, that we're always going to spend more money. We're always going to, we're never going to cut retirement benefits, like I said before. Never going to raise taxes on the majority, the middle class. We're always going to fight China on innovation, make them the enemy. And we're always going to claim to support free speech, right? And that's where the opportunities are hiding, right? If you bet on inflation risk, if you bet on inflation, you got resistant assets that you can do to help with inflation. You could start, businesses that help aging populations. You could learn industries that benefit from the U.S.-China rivalry, such as like defense, AI, infrastructure. You could build personal platforms where you can podcast, newsletter, do social media, have your own audience before the social media roles get restricted and it gets tight on you. So it's not like about conspiracy though. It's about pattern recognition. And the sooner that you start acting on patterns that these, politicians, kind of trend in, that's where, you'll level up, but you can't react to the headlines. But let's go deeper though, because the biggest illusion is that these people are fighting for you, right? The politicians are fighting for you. The Trump's going to save you, stuff like that. But spoiler alert, they're not. They're protecting themselves. So take this example, right? The ultra wealthy, they don't sell any assets, right? They buy real estate, stocks, companies, and what they do is they borrow against those assets to live. You know what I mean? So like say they buy like a big commercial real estate property, right? They own that, and then they'll borrow against that. They'll borrow against that asset, and the reason why they do that is because loans aren't taxable income, which means they live tax free. And then they die, right? And then those assets just pass on to the next person. And that loophole's been around for decades. And you think it's going to go away? Not a chance. Too many politicians use it, right? Another thing another game that they play is, let's say you're worth $10 million, right? You know what you're doing. You set up a trust, and then you move to a tax-free state. And then your kids will inherit that trust without paying a dime in real estate in estate tax. And you think that's ever going to be reformed? Again, not likely. These people, write the rules, benefit from the rules, right? The people that are writing the rules benefit from the rules. So what's the move here? You can't complain. You got to learn the game and then play it. You got to build assets. Don't just earn income. You got to build assets. You got to learn the tax law, not to cheat it, but you got to navigate it. And you got to diversify early. You got to, protect your downside. And you got to stop assuming that the system will change in your favor, because it won't. These politicians, they just protect themselves, and it's never going to change. But let's circle back here with Elon. I think this is a warning shot, not a collapse, because Tesla's stock, took a dip whenever this feud with Trump and Elon first started. People, were saying, is Elon finished, right? But I don't think he's even close, right? Because here's the truth: the United States needs Elon. They need his innovation. They need his factories. They need his batteries. They need his satellites. They even need his social media, like his reach on social media, right? They might check Elon, right? They might humble Elon, but they will never cancel him. And that's how the system works. If you're too valuable to fail, you'll get protected unless you become a threat to power. Elon, will get humbled, and then he'll get welcomed back. That's just how this ends, right? And then that's another key lesson. You can be disruptive, but just not too disruptive, right? You can be successful, just don't challenge the king. You can be influential, but you just have to stay in your lane. If you step out of line, they'll remind you of who's boss. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how many companies you built. That's like the real hierarchy there. But let's stop pretending. We're not going to change the political system by voting harder. We're not going to fix national spending by an Instagram story, right? We're not going to, argue about the headlines on our timeline, right? But what we can do is we can learn how the power players move. We can use that knowledge to build our own futures, and then we can play the long game with focus and patience. So that's what this episode is really about. Let's talk about what you do with everything that we've just unpacked here. So there's a reason why this is called political theater. It's not about helping you. It's about keeping you watching, reacting, and arguing. Because the longer that you're distracted, the less likely you're able to start that business, build an online platform, right? Read the tax code, buy a rental property, stack up Bitcoin, whatever, right? That's the game. They keep the average man watching the stage, watching the argument between Elon and Trump, and then the real power will move, happen. The real power moves happen behind the curtain. So what's the escape? You got to stop watching. You got to start building. Your focus is your freedom. Your time is going to be your leverage. And your attention is the most valuable asset. So you got to start protecting it like it matters, because it really does. So let's cut through the noise and talk about taking action. Here's, I think, 5 things that you can do right now to help with this stuff. First thing is, build your own or buy your own cash flowing business online. So you don't need to invent the next Tesla. You just need a product or skill or a service that solves a real problem, right? So you could start, a faceless YouTube channel. A lot of people do that. You could sell info products. You could do affiliate marketing. You could buy a small website online. We might make a video about that in the future, but you could buy a small website or Shopify store that someone's neglecting and turn it into a successful, stream of income. But income is independence, and even a few grand a month can change your whole life. Number 2, own assets, not just opinions. So Twitter arguments aren't going to compound for you, but stocks do. Podcast clips don't pay rent, even when we do this, but this isn't paying the rent, but real estate pays the rent, right? So the system is rigged for owners, and you got to become an owner. So own some Bitcoin, buy some index funds, start a business, own some skills that you can leverage for money. And you got to stop chasing trends. You just got to stack real equity in things. Now, number 3 is learn how to play the tax game. If you're thinking about taxes like a W-2 employee, then you're behind big time. You can track your write-offs, right? You can start understanding how the deductions work in the tax code. You can use tools like Keeper or QuickBooks. You could talk to a CPA, not TurboTax, like a real CPA. And rich people don't pay less taxes because they cheat. They pay less because they plan ahead for taxes. So you got to start planning. And number 4 is build your personal platform. The world is full of controlled narratives and shadow bans. But your email list or your podcast or your blog or social media, that's your digital land. No one can re-platform your own site. No one can cancel your email list, right? So you got to start today. Share what you're learning, post your journey. That's what we're doing here. Build a brand, even if it's small. Get 1,000 followers, whatever, but it'll change your life. And your future success might depend on how much trust you can build with an audience. Those are the people that are going to pay you. Those are the people that building your own business can support you and make money. And then the last one here is zoom out. Always zoom out. This week it's Trump versus Elon, right? Last week it was inflation. Next week it'll be some sort of scandal or protest or interest rate hike. But zoom out. Look at the macro. Look at the 10-year horizon. Who owns the infrastructure? Who builds dirt and chaos? Who's acquiring while everyone else is arguing? Be that guy. Because the thing we're all watching, this circus, it's going to end eventually. And when the lights go off, only the builders, the buyers, the quiet strategists are going to be the ones standing. So if you're still here, though, I think you get it. You're just if you're watching this, I think you're not just another guy watching the drama unfold. I think you're gonna you're trying to figure out the real meaning behind it. You're trying to build. You're trying to break free. You're trying to take control of your future, even in a system that's designed to distract you. So here's what I'll leave you with. Don't fall for the public feuds. They're just smoke screens. Study the patterns too. Those will show you, what never changes. Also, own more, consume less. I think that's the easy one. And create leverage. Ditch dependence. And be louder privately. Win quietly. Win more powerfully. And remember, when the world's arguing over who should be in charge, you should, be working to never need a boss or a substitute or a savior, never again, because they're not going to save you. But this is the Modern Man's Playbook. Let's get to work.